I was probably no older than 5 or 6 when my mom told me about the mountain woman for the first time. Mom had many stories, but she would never tell them at bedtime, and never around a campfire. She would tell them during bath time as a kid, or sometimes while she made dinner and I pretended to help. When I outgrew those things, she would share her stories while we walked the dogs. We always had dogs growing up. Still do. Always old rescues from the shelter Mom worked at. Dogs knocking on death's doorstep. Most didn't live more than a couple years, but every night we would walk the ones that still could. And most nights, Mom would fill the silence between our footsteps with the firelight serpent, back-tongue child, or the mountain woman. I'm not sure where they came from. My mom is pretty much your standard blend of American white lady. Dad's never really been in the picture. He had a quick fling with my mom in the spring of '97, and then spent her pregnancy and my whole life in and out of tent cities and needle parks. I don't know my paternal grandparents, but Mom's parents had a lightness to them that told me they'd never heard the stories I was raised with. I should note here that they weren't all scary, the stories. In fact, most weren't. Different, maybe, or dark, but not all scary. And there was something to them, some air of old tradition, of sanctity, a feeling that if you were told one, you ought to listen, you ought to be attentive, and you ought to let the story breathe. Hearing Mom's stories was like listening to the gospel, except she never asked you to believe in them, and they never expected anything of you. But you sure as shit never disrespected them. Now, I'm going to tell you about the mountain woman, the same way my mom told me. It gives me a lot of anxiety to put this on a page. It's not scary, per se, but none of Mom's stories feel like they should be anywhere but in the air, hanging between teller and listener. You have to understand that under normal circumstances, I would never do this. All I ask is that you treat this story with respect. You treat the mountain woman with dignity. She is not a scary story to tell in the dark. She is not a ghost to summon in the bathroom mirror at a sleepover. It goes like this. When the woman died, she walked up the mountain. She did so smiling, though she had forgotten her shoes at the bottom with her bones, for the wild heather was blooming, and the mountain laurel, though flowerless, grew sweet along the weathered path she traveled. Where she stepped, the creatures of the ground writhed and rose to greet the gold of the dying sun, and the roots of the bushes she so admired shriveled in the darkness of the earth. For dead things should not walk the land. But walk she did, on and on through early evening. Mom would pause here, always. She never forgot to let the story breathe, to let the mountain woman breathe. I don't know why, but I know that it felt right. At dusk, mist crawled in with his cold hands and grasping fingers. The soft ground beneath her feet grew sharp with stone. Still, the woman smiled. Still, the woman walked. Sometimes Mom would look up to the sky here. Sometimes she would stop walking, if only for a moment, her eyes closed. I would watch her. I would wait. Again, she had a way of speaking when she told these stories. She commanded respect, patience, or maybe the stories themselves did. So I would wait, at 6 years old or 16. And when she was ready, when the story was ready, she would continue. Dead things should not walk the land, but on the woman walked, to the top of the mountain, trailing blood that wasn't real blood from the soles of feet that weren't real feet, shivering in skin that wasn't real skin. And the trees bent from her, and the mist. He tried so hard with his pale, frigid fingers to hold her. Behind the woman, her false blood stained the rocks red, stirred things best left undisturbed. Those things rose from the rocks, crude, ravenous imitations of shadows. As night fell deeper, they ate up the mist and all the wriggling creatures she drew from the earth farther down the mountain. Then, they moved upward into the air and swallowed the last traces of day from the sky. Mom would stare straight ahead now, perfectly still. Maybe seeing something in her mind, maybe really seeing something that I couldn't. I'm less sure now. She would finish the story unmoving, as the dogs whined around our feet and the halogen street lamps flickered on. The woman reached the top of the mountain just as darkness fell in all its total hunger. There were no more laurels, no more heather, and no more stars in the vast empty sky. Her shadows that were not shadows, born from her blood that was not blood, ate it all, took it all. And in that starving darkness, the woman stumbled, blind and reaching, smile eaten with all the light of the mountain, and she fell. At some point, as a teenager, I asked her what happened next. What became of the mountain woman? She cleared her throat and shrugged, started walking again. I'm not sure. Maybe she got up and moved along. Maybe she fell into the night forever. Or maybe she woke up in the morning, at the bottom of the mountain, and walked back up again. My mom died last year. Early onset dementia. It was a brutal disorder, and it took her from us long before it killed her. But I'm not here to get into 7 years of ugliness and dread. I'm here to talk about what happened after, and some things from before. I mentioned we had dogs. That's important. They were important, in a way I didn't understand before. After Mom got sick, I moved back home from college to help with everything, and I kept on the tradition. Kept taking in the dogs that were far too old for anyone else to want to adopt. Every couple years, I would cry, dig a new hole in the backyard, and go back to the shelter. I still have the same dog I had when she died. His name is Sparky. He's a black and white Shih Tzu with a permanent ear infection and bad joints. He's half blind, will walk up the steps but never down, and I have to clean the gunk from his eyes every night with these special wipes. I love him. We never really had small dogs, but with Mom being sick and all, I figured it would be a little easier for me to manage. Besides, he doesn't need to be big. He doesn't have to fight. He just has to warn me. The first time I ever heard Sparky growl was a week after Mom died. I was on leave from work, and while I should have spent that week planning a memorial, I spent it getting drunk all night and sleeping all day. I wasn't eating much, wasn't brushing my teeth or showering. It was one of those drunken nights on the couch that the dog's hackles rose, and he started growling. He looked ridiculous. Tiny Shih Tzu staring at the door with his itty-bitty teeth bared. I would have laughed, but I was struck with some cold, crawling fear in that moment. A sudden paranoia crept and prickled along my skin like frost on glass. Maybe it was because I was home alone for the first time in years. Maybe it was because something was outside my door in the dark. I sat, frozen on the couch. I didn't get up to look. I didn't call Sparky over. I held my breath and listened so hard I could feel my pulse in my ears. I heard nothing, not even crickets. After maybe 5 minutes, the dog calmed down, padded back over, and hopped up next to me. He lied down in my lap, but he kept his eyes on the door. I stayed awake until the sun rose and I sobered up. I opened the curtains and looked outside. The neighbor across the street was sitting on her porch, smoking a cigarette in her pajamas. Nobody was at my door. Nothing seemed out of place. I let Sparky out to do his business, and I went to bed. The same thing happened the next night, and the next, and the next after that. I stopped drinking and fixed my sleep schedule. I I still woke up to the dog growling, staring at the bedroom door or the window. You know how when you see someone so often, you don't notice that they're growing, that their hair's been getting thinner, or their skin's been wrinkling with age. It took me a week to realize my lawn was dying, or patches of it were. It wasn't just that crappy yellow it turns in the dead heat of summer either. It was totally and completely limp. I tugged at it in different spots, and each time it came right out of the ground, like there were no roots holding it in place anymore, like they'd just let go. I looked over to my neighbors' yards, perfectly healthy, vibrant and green and lush under mild spring weather. That prickly feeling reared its head again, and something drove me to walk backwards toward the sidewalk. With the entirety of the front lawn in view, dread landed in my stomach, heavy and cold and hot all at once, like 1,000 twisting, hungry snakes. The dead patches weren't random. They weren't even patches, really. They were footsteps, stumbling, winding footsteps that traveled in a tight circle around the house. Offshoots of clearly well-worn paths led to each of the windows, diverging from the chaotic, dizzying orbit that must have been walked hundreds of times. In the garden beds, underneath the windows, the climbing ivy had peeled off the walls and grayed. The daffodils and hyacinths reduced to shriveled, wrinkled stems, and worms, mole crickets, millipedes by the dozens writhed on the ground, as if drawn up from the soil by a magnet. I didn't pack a bag. I don't even remember if I locked the door on the way out. I grabbed my dog, my phone, my wallet, and got the fuck out. I drove in no particular direction for an hour. I probably cried. Mob stories played on an unending, burning loop in my head. Eventually, I stopped at an indoor-outdoor cafe. I sat at a table on the deck with Sparky. I ordered some sort of sandwich. Didn't eat it. Couldn't. Fed most of it to the dog. I racked my brain for anyone we could stay with and came up short. I'd lost almost all of my friends when I moved home to take care of Mom. Fell out of touch with the rest over the course of the years. Even if someone would help, I couldn't risk bringing death to their doorstep. I settled on an Airbnb. It was this kitschy, sunflower-covered nightmare. The kitchen, living area, and bed were all crammed into one open space, but it was far enough away from home that it felt moderately safe, and that's what mattered. There was no question about it, in my mind. Mom didn't make up the mountain woman. Maybe none of her stories were made up, and something dead had been walking around my house at night. Now, I'm not stupid. I know it was her. I know it was Mom. And if I were half a degree less sure about what would follow the poisoned earth and carpets of bugs, I might have done something dumb like try to see her. But she didn't raise me to be dumb. That night, when I was finally able to sleep, I dreamt of the mountain woman, of ravenous shadows with sharp claws and wide mouths. I dreamt of falling forever in total darkness. Forever only lasted until 2 in the morning. I woke up to Sparky's growling, this time louder. He barked, hackles raised, and stared straight at the door. Something was trying to open it. The knob rattled for a moment, thankfully locked. Sparky's attention moved to the side window then, the one right next to the garish, sunflower-painted headboard. Through the sheer curtains, a moving shape. She never touched the window, never knocked, never spoke to me. She just stood there, like being close was enough. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to run away or puke or cry. I sat like a stone at the end of the bed, too scared to get up. Hours passed. I stared at the window. My mother didn't move. I only knew she was still there because the dog never calmed down, never looked away. The clock on the microwave across the room read 7 in the morning, but it was dark as pitch outside. That darkness stretched its claws under the door, leaked slowly through the cracks around the windows like gas. It's hard to explain what it looked like. Solid, but not. Like something and a nothingness that replaced somethingness all at once. It was like it reduced 3 dimensions to 2 wherever it touched. And it had trapped us in the house. I grabbed the dog and retreated to the center of the room, standing on the coffee table under a ceiling light. I was half paralyzed by fear, praying that the late sun would just wake up and rise. Sparky shook and pissed all over everything. The darkness spread fast. When I blinked, it stole entire walls, and then the air in front of them, as if light died suddenly and completely at its border. I could swear it had teeth, millions of eating mouths that reached out from its edges. As those frenzied, gnashing mouths came for us, I did something I'm both ashamed and glad to admit. Staring into the flat, hungry blackness of the world, I screamed for my mom. I begged her to make it stop. I told her I loved her. And as the shadows ate their way up to my feet and down to my head and closed in all around us, I told part of her own story back to her. I screamed at her that dead things should not walk the land. Everything stilled for a moment. Grasping shadows froze in place. After a heartbeat, just as suddenly as it had come, the darkness fled from the room like hundreds of black hounds scrambling over each other to escape. The sun shone bright and orange through the windows. I shook so badly I thought I would fall off the table, thought my legs might just give out, but I managed to step down, to set Sparky gently on the floor. He was untouched, perfectly fine, trembling almost as badly as I was, but otherwise in one piece. I realized, looking down at my feet, where the shadows had crept the closest, that I wasn't. The tips of each of my big toes were missing, just gone, down to the base of my toenails. It didn't hurt. The skin was completely smoothed off at the ends. I sat on the couch for a long while, probably in shock. When I finally came back to myself, I put my shoes on, grabbed Sparky and my belongings, and walked out the door. When we'd arrived at the Airbnb, there was a maple tree in the front yard, healthy grass, and shrubs growing along the front of the house. When we left, there was nothing but cracked dirt, paving stones, and tunnels where roots once stretched. Not an inch of life left on the property, not even the remains of it. It's been about a year since Mom died, and then died again. My toes haven't grown back, but I'm back to work, and I've made some new friends. I've even been going on dates. The Airbnb owner took me to court over the disappearance of her lawn. I won. I don't think any lawyer could hope to convince a jury that one woman uprooted and carried away every living thing on the property in one evening. I still feel bad over it, honestly. But I have bigger problems now. I'm writing this because I woke up at the bottom of a lake this morning. Mom's stories are coming back. I don't know why, and I don't know how. But I know what happens at the end of Rika and the River Song, and it isn't good. If you've somehow heard these stories, know that they're real. Know that they're still alive, and the things that live in them are still hungry.